Chapter 12. 2:30 p.m. Sam and Brant left their trucks behind the vet's office and stopped at the crosswalk. A cafe was across the street, with an outside patio. Traffic zoomed past until the lights changed. It had already been a hell of a day. So it was no surprise that the thought of answering the upcoming questions made Sam nervous. Questions always made her nervous. They grabbed a table slightly away from the others. "This place has really fast service." A waitress walked over with menus. Sam shook her head. "Just coffee for me, please." Brant snorted. "Like hell." He motioned to the waitress. "I'll have coffee as well. Bring 2 chicken Caesar salads, please. Just make mine bigger with a side of garlic bread." Sam stared at him. "And what if I'm not hungry?" "Too bad. You need to keep your energy up to make the most of our visit with Stefan." She didn't have an argument for that. The waitress returned with 2 mugs of steaming coffee. Sam murmured her thanks, wrapping both hands around the cup. She stared out at the traffic whizzing by. "Hey, are you there?" Sam glanced up to see Brant staring at her. "Sorry, my mind is just wandering." "You do seem distracted. So talk to me." She sat back and toyed with the cutlery. "It's not that easy. I presume this is about the car incident today." "I don't know if it is or not. I guess so." She sighed. "Can I ask you a question first?" "What do you want to know?" He took a long drink of his coffee, his eyes on hers. Her lip curled. "That's the thing. I'm not too sure that I do want to know." The waitress returned with their order. Taking a bite of her salad, Sam noticed the other customers. The table across from them had a family of 5 sitting around, enjoying a cool drink. Sam watched their normal activity with a hint of jealousy. She'd never had that type of experience. And she never would, unless she could put this behind her. She pursed her lips before lifting her own cup for a sip. "How much of my history have you dug up?" "I had a surface history on my desk the first day you walked into the station. After taking your fingerprints and DNA, I learned a bit more." He toyed with the sugar packets. "I know you were in a bad car accident several years ago. I know you spent time in a mental hospital." She closed her eyes, letting her head drop. "I know you've helped the police in the past, and at times your help appeared to be more of a hindrance." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "I know you went to college where your best friend was murdered. You went to the police to offer your help, and together you caught the killer." "Lucy," she whispered. Memories flooded her mind. Lucy smiling, with her wild and crazy coffee cups. She'd haunted curio shops for her next best mug. She'd been so open, so caring, and now she was so dead, just like the other victims. "You have it wrong. I went to the police to see if I could help. I thought I was getting somewhere, and then Lucy was murdered. You see? She was murdered because of me. The killer, after finding out I was helping the police, came after me. He got her instead." Guilt tore at her. Her head bowed even more, under the weight of the memories. She sniffled. "I couldn't save her. I couldn't save any of them." "So you ran away? From your education, from your friends, and from all of society?" The accusation stabbed into her. "That's not fair," she whispered. "I tried so hard to help those women. It broke my heart when I couldn't." Brant squeezed her hand gently, his thumb stroking the soft skin of her palm. Sam watched the slow movement, mesmerized by his gentleness. He said, "Do you realize that's what I do day in and day out? There are so many people I haven't been able to help. And some who I have. I can't quit just because I don't always succeed. It's important we just keep trying to save the ones we can." She glanced up, caught by the strength of his gaze. I didn't totally quit. I tried again when several children went missing. I found I couldn't ignore the pleas for help. Not when I thought I could do something. Did you help? She beamed, a lightness inside bursting forth. Yes, I found a little girl who was missing. We saved her in time. He grinned. It feels great, doesn't it? The light inside her grew stronger. Yes. Her smile dimmed and fell away. Then, when the next child showed up dead, the suspicion fell on me again. It got pretty ugly. Brant nodded. He could just imagine. When a ship started to sink, all the rats either bailed or turned on each other. She grimaced. There was one cop in particular. He disliked psychics. I think they all did to some degree or another, but he hated me. Picking up her cup of coffee, Sam bathed her face in the warmth drifting upward. Is that what you were afraid I'd find out about? The corner of her mouth tilted. Yeah, sort of. If you'd talked to this guy, he'd have told you a whole lot of nothing good. To tell you the truth, I think I did talk to him. Sam's stomach curdled, tossing the salad around inside. Oh. She ran her fingers through the loose curls at her temple, the weight of her braid hot and heavy in the sun. Is that a problem? He leaned forward, watching her. She grimaced. If I show up dead, look to him first. Brant stopped and stared at her, his cup stalled midair. Seriously? It was all she could do to meet his eyes. Eventually, taking a deep breath, she said, We had a difficult last meeting. She ran her fingers across her neck. As much as he hated me, he believed in my skills. It's just he wanted them solely for his use. I ended up taking off. Yes, running away and hiding from everyone. It was better than letting this asshole control my life. He threatened to kill me if I ever told anyone. But he was a cop. Deputy, actually. And a drug dealer on the side. He glanced over the cup at her. Are you sure? She nodded. Are you saying he could have been behind the wheel of the truck that tried to run you off the road? Her shoulders slumped. I don't know, she half-wailed. He hated my guts and... She stopped talking, unable to tell him the whole story. Tears clogged her eyes, emotions clogged her throat. She couldn't believe that, after all this time, this deputy still had the power to destroy her. Surely she'd moved past that. I disappeared and hoped he'd forget about me. But once I called him, then he knew where to find you. She nodded again as she finished off the last bite and moved her plate on top of his empty one. His gaze was intent on her face. Sam felt heat rise that had nothing to do with the sun. He stirred his cup until Sam reached across and stilled his hand. Go and get a second cup so you have something to stir. Even as she picked up her own cup, relief slowly spread through her limbs. Relief to have someone to share this burden with. Relief that she was no longer alone. A smile twitched at the corner of his mouth. Do you want another? No, not if we're heading to Stefan's house soon. If you're done eating, Brant glanced at his watch, let's head out then. We'll talk on the way. Great, she muttered. You'll be fine. We'll figure this out. They crossed the street to his truck. He walked to her door and unlocked it, before walking around to the driver's side. The small concession to old-fashioned courtesy made her feel good. Getting into the truck was a different story. Her truck was lower to the ground. His had huge tires and no running boards. Fine for a 6-foot male, but she barely crested 5'4" and struggled to get up to the seats. Flustered, Sam finally shut the door and got settled. A sidelong glance at Brant's face didn't help. He was trying to hold back a grin. Sam harumphed and refused to look at him again. As they passed the town's welcome sign, she ventured to break the silence. How long have you known Stefan? Brant glanced at her quickly. Close to 10 years now. Sam raised her eyebrows at that. That's quite a while. Is he your age? That question brought a frown to his face. I don't know how old he is. I'd say he's mid-30s. Then again, he doesn't look a day older now than when I met him. Older would be better than younger in this case. Sam could only hope he had had decades of experience handling what the psychic life dished out. She needed to talk to someone who'd already figured out this stuff. Brant took a left turn off the highway and drove farther into the country. Peace surrounded the area. Heavily treed on the left and rolling hills on the right. Stunningly beautiful, and something she didn't expect to see. He lives just a couple miles farther. She nodded. And he prefers to live away from people, just like I do. Yeah. Brant snorted. Stefan is different. There's really no other way to describe him. Pursing her lips, she thought about that. In a way, the same description applied to her too. Better to wait and see just what that meant to Brant. Maybe it would give her an idea of how he saw her. 3:30 p.m. Brant navigated the last turn onto Stefan's twisting driveway. The man had chosen a hell of a spot for a hideaway. Now that Brant lived closer, he had a chance to visit and not just talk on the phone. Stefan didn't like phones. Then he bordered on antisocial at times. Brant regarded Sam's profile. Something was bugging her. In typical Sam style, she sat worrying on something instead of outright asking him. The house winked at them from between the trees. Brant drove around to the far side and parked. Sam appeared awestruck. Remembering how he'd felt the first time he'd arrived, with the sun bouncing off all the glass, Brant could fully understand her reaction. Ready? He couldn't wait. Putting these two together in the same room should be interesting. Stefan wasn't the friendliest of males. But all women reacted to Stefan, one way or another. Over time, Brant had come to understand the type of woman each was, by her reaction to Stefan. For that reason alone, he'd wanted to be on hand when Sam met Stefan for the first time. He needed to see Sam's reaction and see into the depths of who she was. 3:35 p.m. Sam shut the truck door gently. Turning, she tried to take in the scene. She couldn't imagine being the man, lucky enough to own such a place. Brant, several steps ahead, turned to her, one eyebrow raised. Coming? They walked toward the front door. How long has he lived here? Sam couldn't help it. Her head swiveled from side to side at the spectacular foliage and at the unique wooden carvings peering out among the brighter-than-believable plants. The strong scents blended and fused into a fresh woodsy smell. Everything appears like it's on drugs, for God's sake. Or you are. Brant grinned at her. He's got plants from all over the globe. Everything about Stefan is unique and indefinable. I'll say. Sam stopped at the front door. It was made from one solid block of wood with faces pushing out of the wood grain. Some laughing, some crying, yet all of them glowing with life. Christ. She didn't know if she were praying or swearing, but there was no way not to react. Everything she'd seen so far came under the heading of stunning. Maybe not comfortable, yet undeniably thought-provoking. Quite the place he's got, huh? That's an understatement. I can't wait to meet our host. Sam barely caught Brant's sidelong glance. She wondered at it as he pounded on the door, stalling any chance of asking. Come in. The shout came from deep inside. Brant pushed open the door. Hey, Stefan. It's us. Yeah, I caught that. Let me just wash up. I'll be right there. The voice came from the far left. Sam noted that in a distant part of her mind, as she stood in the front foyer, her mouth hanging open. The inside of the house shone with warm yellow sunlight bouncing off wood floors and ceilings. Streaming light struck and highlighted vivid paintings hung on every wall. The room had a surreal energy. The entire house was an artist's canvas. "Hey, Stefan. Good to see you." The two men slapped shoulders. Brant's large shoulders blocked Sam's view. Brant stepped slightly to the side and motioned between the two people. His voice light and easy, he said, "Stefan, meet Sam." "Sam, Stefan." Sam stared at Stefan. Her soul stirred. Overwhelming love and warmth flooded through her. Stefan gazed into her eyes, his gentle lips curved into a welcoming smile. That same warm, loving smile from her vision, that same man from Louise's car accident. Then he opened his arms. Without warning, she burst into tears and ran into them. They closed securely around her. 3:37 p.m. Brant's mouth fell open. He didn't know what to think or even how to jumpstart his brain. He was on shocked standby. He'd never seen a woman react like Sam had. Ever. Without trying to be too obvious, Brant tried to assess the clinch they were in. It didn't look lover-like. Neither did they resemble two strangers. He didn't know what the hell was going on. He'd sure like to, though. Interrupting them was out of the question. Whatever was going on was intensely personal. Even standing in the same room was uncomfortable. He walked over to stare out the huge window. The acreage around the house was as wild and as impressive as the rest of the property. He heard soft voices behind him. He turned around to see the two smiling in a strangely intimate way. He took several steps in their direction. "I gather you two know each other?" They both stared at him in surprise. Sam's answer stunned him. "What? No, we've never met." 3:42 p.m. Brant motioned toward Stefan and then at Sam. "Is that how you greet all strangers?" Feeling heat rise on her cheek, Sam glanced over at Stefan, who stared at Brant, an odd twist to his features. Christ. Stefan was as gorgeous in person as he was in her vision. A charming smile graced the model's face. She turned to Brant. "Oh, that." Brant made a choked sound. "Yeah, that?" He stared between Sam and Stefan. "So an explanation, please." Sam glanced at Stefan to find him watching her. "Go ahead." Sam stared at the floor, knowing she was rocking slightly in place. Making a decision, she looked up to find Brant's suspicious gaze firmly planted on her. "Remember the car accident that I told you about? Louise Enderby? What I didn't tell you was that I saw a man in that vision. Not the killer, but a man who, at the time, I thought might have been someone close to Louise, who had already died by that time. Like her husband, a longtime lover, at least someone like that. He was trying to help me, as her or Louise, get out of the car and cross over." She glanced at Stefan, who had that benevolent smile on his face. The guy left a very strong impression because so much love was in his expression. It radiated throughout his energy. He glowed like an angel. Stefan snorted. Sam smiled and continued. "I had no way of knowing who he was. Still, it isn't uncommon for a loved one to show up at the time of death, to welcome the dying person. Except this guy had an incredible impact on me because he had such a loving energy, and it was directed my way." She gazed into Stefan's eyes. "That man in my vision was Stefan." Brant reeled backward as if from a blow. "What?" He stared at Stefan, searching for confirmation. "Is that possible?" Sam shrugged. "I don't know how, but it happened." Stefan stared at them both. "It's a first for me too. I've never come across another psychic in my visions." Brant focused on Sam. "You're saying that you recognized Stefan here from your vision. And the emotions from that vision were so strong that when you saw him, you burst into tears and walked into a stranger's arms." Hands on hips, head tilted sideways, he stared at her in disbelief. Sam knew how important her answer was. It was also important to her that he believe her story. She hated to admit it, but she'd come to enjoy his acceptance and now wanted his respect. It is hard to understand. You have to consider the circumstances. I was caught in a horrible vision, inside a burning car, inside a dying woman. Stefan appeared, yes, I'll say it again, almost angelic in appearance, and he saved me. The emotions that existed at the time were overwhelming. This man cared about Louise. I don't understand that part. She glanced sidelong at Stefan, who listened casually. But for me, it was as if he loved me, cared about me, and was trying to save me. She implored Brandt to understand. It was pure instinct to cry when I saw him again. I thought he didn't exist, that he wasn't real. Then suddenly he's here, in front of me. She shrugged. I just reacted. Brandt shook his head, his fingers running raggedly through his hair. Wow. Precisely. Sam found little satisfaction in his comment. She didn't have time to adjust to this scenario either. Questions crowded her mind. She didn't know where to start, and her energy levels had dropped alarmingly. Stefan, may I sit down? Brandt made a funny sound. She glanced over at him, but he'd already reached her. His arm wrapped around her shoulders. You look like you're ready to pass out. Come sit down. Stefan moved ahead of them both. You two get comfortable, and I'll put on coffee. It looks like we have a lot to talk about.